Holy dude. My gosh.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming to follow some presentation. This time it's upon myself to offer it. I will give a presentation, then we will have a second part discussing and comparing experiences or ideas as usual. The title was UAP in the boot, and that may sound a strange title indeed, but you may ask, what's the boot? So what's the boot? Well, you may know or not, but in Italian we call ourselves, Italy, the boot. So that was the reason why the title was mentioning this name. So you might expect that we are talking about UAPs in Italy, and you may be afraid that we are going to suffer a long talk about several decades of sightings, a full history of who, what, when, where. But that's not my intention, since we would not have time enough for such a detailed presentation. My intention is to do something different, to limit myself to a presentation of a single object. It is the one that you can see here. Each one is pronouncing it in a different way according to the language one is speaking. So CISU, CISU, and so on. But we in Italy, we say CISU. That's the way we tell it. And what does it mean? Well, it's the acronym of the Centro Italiano Studi Ufologi. It is the Italian Center for UFO Studies. So tonight we will have a short presentation of the Italian Center by me. Well, what is it? The Italian Center for UFO Studies is a cultural, apolitical, no-profit association made of unpaid volunteers. I like to say this in the first time since a few days ago. A fellow from another country asked me, how are you paying salaries to the people involved? And I said, well, nobody has ever been paid, because all what we are doing is for free. What are the goals, the purposes, the aims? There are, well, we may say, 5 aims of the association. The first one is to make investigations on UFO sighting reports, I should say in Italy, or by Italians, but it's obvious, so I will not repeat it. We are also meaning to promote the scientific study of UFO phenomena in a double sense. We are not interested in other kinds of approaches. We are not saying that the mystical approach of some spiritual one are not good, but it's not for us. We chose to try to follow a scientific-oriented way, an approach, and we are not doing scientific study. You see that it is written to promote, since we are not scientists. We are encouraging the scientific study. At the same time, something that we can do ourselves, that we are doing ourselves, is to improve the information circulation about UFO phenomena, UFO research, and in a double sense, internally and externally, as we will see. Then we have a very ambitious purpose. We have been having it for a long time now, nearly 40 years, and it is to coordinate our national activities of data collection. And beside collecting, we are very much involved in preserving documentation for the future. These were and are the aims of the organization. What was it born? Well, it was founded in December of '85 by a not so small group of people who came away from another already existing national organization that is still existing and whose name is and was Centro Ufologico Nazionale, National UFO Center, of which a few of the founding members of the CISU were in the council. I was in the board myself. But our roots, our three roots, may be traced in a local group, the Turing group, that is the oldest existing one, since it was formed in 1949 and has been publishing a journal about UFOs since 1964, whose name was Clipeus. It's no longer published now. The second route was a small committee called the CNIFA, National Investigation Committee on Anomalous Aerial Phenomena, that was another group of people leaving the CUN a few years before, let's say 1973. They had been publishing the very first peer-reviewed scientific UFO journal in the mid-70s up to the mid-80s that was called UPR, UFO Phenomena International Annual Review. And the third route was the young generation of UFO interested people, of which I was part. We were young at the time, that had joined the National Center during the years around the large UFO wave of 1978. There were several dozens local groups that joined the national organization, and most of them decided to go out of it in late 1985. Well, but what are we doing? The first thing, the most important activity is the investigation. That is a systematic collection of data about UFO sightings. Our association has been publishing, is still having the only existing UFO field investigation manual in our country that has been adopted by the main UFO organization. It's the same manual that I wrote a long time ago for the National UFO Center, and the two organizations are still sharing the same methodology. That was not so original. I would like to say that nothing we do is original. We are doing the same things that most UFO organizations, the rational, the scientific-oriented UFO organizations, are doing everywhere in the world. So we were and are following the same field investigation methodology that was developed for the Mutual UFO Network in the USA, for the Bufora in the United Kingdom. And we built our own following those guidelines. So we are investigating reports. We are forming investigators so that they know how to work. We have developed, as most organizations do, a standard questionnaire form that has been online for witnesses to fill since more than 20 years now. We have collected more than 9,000 online field questionnaires in these years. And our database of Italian UFO sighting reports is now comprising about 35,000 entries since the beginning of the 20th century. But we've got quite a collection of old reports from ancient centuries too, that we are not considering modern UFOs, but pre-UFOs, if you like. A lot of work is developed on local basis. As we will see, we have always had provincial or regional coordinators and catalog and archives on a local basis, since the local investigators are the best fitted people to know what's happening in their own region or province. And we have published quite a few along the years. You have to think that we have now been active for nearly 40 years. So we have had a lot of time to develop, to publish, to make things, and we are talking about 4 decades of activity. We also collect data on, we may call it a thematic base. So archives, catalogs, and even research projects specialized on specific categories of sighting reports, the classical ones. There is somebody who has been collecting the landing report, somebody specializing in ground traces or on physical effects, for example, on vehicles or animals. Humanoid reports, the close encounters of the third kind. Scientists like pilots, unidentified submerged objects that have become a trend topic now recently, even ball lightning reports. And most of these have developed some specialized publication along the years. Then the archives. The archiving activity is one of the most important ones that we have been doing all the time. And we have built and are still updating one of the largest existing archives in the world. It is the largest existing one in the old continent in Europe, but for the archives for the unexplained one in Norrköping in Sweden, because our Swedish friends have been amassing the very largest archive in the world. Our archives are comprising the usual objects. So we have a book library that is comprising all books published in our country, but also about 1,500 books in other languages. We've got a newspaper library that is a large collection of all the magazines, newsletters, bulletins published about UFOs by UFO groups or by professional publishers since the beginning, let's say since 1958 in our country. And since we heredited the collections of the Turing group that I mentioned before, the Clipeus archives, we have been hosting several tens of thousands of issues of foreign publications that have been exchanging with ours since a very long time. Case histories, of course, are the most relevant part. I already say that we have been collecting about 35,000 reports. By reports, here I am meaning any single source about any individual known report, be it only a newspaper clipping or a detailed field investigation report, because we are systematically collecting all news about any UFO event in our country. Then, of course, we have been still are collecting everything that has been published or is published in the non-specialized press, the mass media, mainly newspapers or magazines, local magazines, illustrated magazines. And our collection is very large. It's about hundreds of thousands clippings and articles. We have been conducting a systematic search in the public libraries, for example, about the origin years 1946 up to 1954, rediscovering thousands of news items. But we also keep some thematic dossiers about specific topics that somebody may have been interested in during those years. So if somebody decides, I am interested in collecting all available literature about angel hair reports, the falls of filaments, well, a dossier was created both for the interested researcher and a copy in the central archive. That's how we built this collection. Of course, we have been amassing a lot of recordings in audio or video. They were on tape. Now most of it is in digital format. And we are keeping everything about everything. So it may be radio, TV emissions, it may be our own investigation or other older investigations, it may be conferences, it may be meetings, anything that may be voice recorded or video recorded is kept and cataloged, and a large part of this and of the paper archive, a large part, but not the larger part, is presently in the digital format and is presently occupying about 1.5 terabytes of data on a network access storage device so that it can be shared by our members across the country. You don't need to come to the headquarters to be able to read or find a large part, as I said, not all, but a large part of our data collections. Well, what next? Congress meetings. We have been having an annual Congress, National UFO Congress, since 1986. 38 different congresses with papers presented, discussion, and so on have been held until now. The number 39 will be next month, November, in Bologna. We have been having public congresses or private congresses, a different version each year, on specific topics or on large updating information ones with scientists, with ufologists, with a very different range of participants. It's several hundreds papers presented in those meetings. At the same time, we have been publishing a journal of ours that has been distributed in libraries, not in newsstands. It's not a pop magazine. It would like to be, it pretends to be a quality journal, not just speaking to the belly, but to the head of people. And beside the journal itself, we have been publishing several different supplements, a press news clipping, a service, a news bulletin, a discussion, UFO forum journal. Not all of them are still published now, but that means several hundreds of issues of published documentation. At the same time, we have been publishing books. It was different to have quality books published by popular publishers. So since the beginning, we had our own publishing house for small circulation books that either we translated, for example, Richard Haynes' book about the Valentich case on the left, or we produced by ourselves, mostly about Italian topics, but not only. It's about 40 books published as of now. At the same time, before beginning with the books or parallel with the books, there have been monographs, let's say another 50 monographs, more or less, on specific topics. They are not properly books, they are more rough in quality. For example, the catalogs that you had seen before, or they may be on specific arguments. The UFO Nazi mythology, some university dissertations that we later published. But we are also very interested in documenting ourselves, in exchanging opinions, having specialized meetings for ourselves, for documenting and discussing among ourselves. For example, on the right, there is one of the meetings of the Historiographic Commission. Since the COVID pandemic experience forced all of us to become more heavily remotely connected, we learned to have very frequent meetings all across the booth without traveling hundreds of miles for physical meetings. So we are now having both kinds of meeting occasions. Not only for ourselves, we have always had a very intense public education activity that is conference to the public of maybe interviews and articles on newspapers and magazines, or participating in emissions, radio and TV emissions, locally or nationally. The public conference is, I mentioned, of course, the distribution of our own journal and creating and updating websites since the very beginning. I think that the first website that we activated was in 1993. the beginning of the web experience. On an international level, we have long been an active part, I would like to say a founding member of the European UFO network. We have always said an exchange, both of publications and of information. There are mailing lists connecting us with our international fellows, as you know far too well, because most of you have been part of the same reality. At the same time, we are participating in international congresses or hosting point fellows. We are not closed within our national boundaries. This is what I was to tell, but we feel a part of a large community. And how are we organized? Well, memberships at two levels. We have always had the first level of collaborators. Nearly anybody can become a collaborator just asking. Nearly everybody. Yeah? We said some no in the past. Very rarely, but there were. But the core of the organization, of the association, is made of full members. That is, those that are selected among the collaborators after 1 or 2 years, because they are serious, they are prepared, they are willing to actively participate. At present, we are 61 full members, while the number of collaborators changed along the years. In the beginning, it was like a pyramid with a smaller group of full members and a larger group of collaborators. Now it's exactly the opposite. We have a larger group of full members and a smaller group of collaborators. So the bodies, the corporate bodies, are the members. They vote for the main decisions. They meet at least once per year to take the decisions. And they elect the directors board. This is the current one that is made of 5 people. There is also a president. In this moment, our president is the first on the left top part. Marco Bianchini is an attorney in Siena. And we also have a structure that is made, as I already said, of provincial representatives, regional coordinators, and some study committees or commissions working on specific topics. They can be created and their mission. Of course, we have several possibility of contact, be it by mail, phone, email, the website, and well, that's all.